So it's a sliding scale. So if you know of somebody that needs insurance, Kid Care is where to go. Nursing homes, people taking care of our most vulnerable. Senator Bradley made it possible for us to provide a whopping 7. We talked about the deficits they run. That was the first thing to come off the top, was to spend the money that they overspent in the years past. We made some changes, though, with Senate Bill 82 and others that hopefully will help them in the future take care of that most vulnerable population. Many of the people that take care of people with disabilities are making $9 an hour. Have you heard that theme? It's all over the state, but yet $60 million is on the way to help launch them, in many instances over $10, and certain instances over $11. So we're very excited about that. We also give an increase to attack the wait list and to make sure that everybody that needs critical services is going to get them. Adoptions are up. We're adopting kids faster than ever in the state of Florida, and to make sure that continues, we have to put money in that pot to help with adoption subsidies. $20.4 million is going to do just that. Mental health via telehealth. That was an initiative of Casey DeSantis, our First Lady, and we said yes to telehealth. $4 million is appropriated for mental health via telehealth. And then opioids is still here. It's kind of in the back seat with this virus that's now in the front seat, but we still appropriate over $119 million for the opioid crisis. We take advantage of $81 million in federal funds. We put our state monies on top of that, and we continue to battle that front. Elder affairs, we have talked about the public guardians. We remove many off the waiting list for those services. The CRC, which is the CCE, the community care for elderly, we put a lot of money there to remove the waiting list. And then Alzheimer's, we put our money where our mouth is with a $2.8 million supplement. That's $11 million increase in Alzheimer's initiatives. In Veterans Affairs, we do put the money to get 2 nursing homes, veterans nursing homes, across the finish line, and hopefully soon we'll be cutting the ribbons on them. And then veterans trainings programs, 1.4, to make sure that if the veteran needs to get retrained to get work, we will help him. Let's talk Corona. The COVID-19. Let me go a little bit more in depth to make sure that that the state, that you can have confidence that the state of Florida is stepping up in a big way. First of all, Senator Bradley already mentioned in the back of the bill, we appropriate $25 million that will be used for the Department of Health for epidemiology staff, laboratory technicians, supplies, enhanced surveillance systems, and medical protective equipment. We also provide an additional, this is additional, $27.3 million for the Department of Health to spend anticipated federal money. We know the feds are also going to be playing heavily. We want to take advantage of that. We allow them to use that money, and they're currently still developing their final plan of how that best will be utilized. We also give $8.2 million in general revenue to the Department of Health, which can be used to purchase vaccines or other supplies for this outbreak or any other emerging threat that Florida faces in the future. We have positions available within our Department of Health, county health departments. There's over 200 full-time employees that are ready to go. If they want to be moved around, they can be. In addition, the Department of Health's laboratory and emergency response system has over 300 employees that also, and $50 million parked, ready to go, that can be refocused to detect, control, and prevent the spread of, again, this disease or any other emerging health threat facing our state. We allow this is important, we allow the Department of Health to increase their budget authority. Should the federal government bring us money, then we allow them to directly spend that money without going before the LBC and having a costly delay of should that occur. We also just received, members, federal approval for a waiver, waiving the rules for our agency with healthcare administration of prior authorization requirements, evacuating facilities, provide services in alternative setting. That shouldn't seem like a lot, but if there was an emergency, that could take a long time. So our agency has already gotten approval to do that. Also, pre-admission screenings for 30 days. just know that there's rules that have been waived to make sure that we give our agencies maximum flexibility to do what's necessary. It's changing daily. It's changing daily, and therefore that flexibility could be what the Department of Health needs to save lives. That is your health silo spending, Mr. President. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chairman Bean. Chairman Brandis, Appropriations Committee on Criminal Justice, recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Justice Appropriations budget totals this year $5.6 billion, including almost 47,000 positions. The Department of Corrections budget is about $2.8 billion and about 25,000 positions. You've all heard about throughout the session about Department of Corrections challenges retaining corrections officers. 46% of our corrections officers will leave within 2 years of being hired. Part of that reason is that high level of turnover is related to low pay, which has been addressed by the full committee and is partly related to the 12-hour work shifts. This budget provides for $17.3 million in general revenue and 220 positions to convert 1/4 of our prison system from 12-hour shifts to 8.5-hour work shifts. The budget also provides funding for critical facility repairs and maintenance of $6 million, for renovation and improvement of mental health facilities of $6 million, and provides $12.4 million for the debt service to provide a new mental health facility in Lake County. We provide for additional security enhances of $3 million, replacement of motor vehicles for $2.6 million. One of the challenges we've been facing is obviously in providing inmate health care. The current costs exceed, when you add in pharmaceuticals, over $500 million annually in inmate health care. But as part of the existing contract with Centurion, we allocate $2 million to upgrade the wiring in the system so that we can move towards electronic health records. This is something that's going to be provided under our contract with Centurion, is the electronic health records, but we needed to upgrade the bandwidth for the facilities, and so we provide $2 million for that. We provide $2.2 million to deal with gang activity and 34 FTEs for a security threat group. One of the major challenges, and you can actually look back into 2004 and see this in an OPAGA report that talks about inmate idleness, and that had been largely unaddressed even in the decade and a half that followed 2004, is the amount of inmate idleness. And so we've spent $1.9 million and 34 FTEs to hire wellness specialists to address inmate idleness in the prison facilities. We're going to spend $3 million on career and technical educations. This is, again, to address inmate idleness and to prepare people for the workforce when they leave corrections institutions. I'd also like to note that the full committee funded an additional 15% pay increase for certified academic instructors in the Department of Corrections. One of the major challenges we have is as the state changes the FTEs for county workers, for county teachers, we have a whole section of teachers inside the Department of Corrections that were not eligible because they don't receive the county funding. So we needed to make sure that there was at least some level of parity, or we would have lost all of our teachers to move to the county system. So I want to thank Chairman Bradley and the President for helping allocate 15% pay increase for certified academic teachers. In order to comply with the federal consent decree inside the Department of Corrections, we funded $28 million for hepatitis C for antivirals. Of note, we also changed the proviso in this to include anything related to any pandemic, so that those funds can be fungible for both purposes. In the Attorney General's office, we have $296 million, or 1,384 positions. One of their major issues was agency-wide information technology infrastructure for $6.4 million. We have cyber fraud initiative for $1.1 million. We have an increase to the victims' compensation payments of $1 million. In the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, their major issue was computerized criminal history record system of $1.9 million. Fibers, their Florida incident-based reporting system of $3 million. Another $3.6 million in data transparency. Inside the Department of Juvenile Justice, which has a total budget of $587 million, We spent another $2.6 million in prevention and early intervention programs. We've seen a lot of success in this area, and Florida really is a leader in diversion for juvenile justice. Critical repairs and maintenance to DJJ facilities of $3.4 million. Increased oversight the medical services and residential programs of $500,000. In the state court system, the number one project there was the new Second District Court of Appeal. That's at $21 million for the Second District Court of Appeal new building. We have $3.4 million in additional judgeships. We have $1.9 million for timely resolution of cases. Those are the major provisions of the state court system. Inside the Justice Administration Commission, we have additional trust fund needs for $5.5 million. The state attorney prosecution for construction fraud of $200,000, and a major initiative by the public defenders of $3 million for substance abuse and related funding issues. That concludes the major issues inside the Department of Corrections, Mr. President.
Thank you, Chairman Brandis. Chairman Bradley, I believe you're going to highlight the aspects of the Transportation and Economic Development budget that Chair Hudson led us on, and then we'll go into questions after that. You recognize, sir.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senators, in the Transportation, Tourism, and Economic Development budget, we have a total budget of $13.7 billion. Here are the highlights. We did not sweep the Affordable Housing Trust funds. $370 million for affordable housing needs in our state. We continue to support hurricane recovery, including $40 million revolving loan fund for small businesses in the region impacted by Hurricane Michael. We fund Visit Florida with recurring dollars at $50 million. And Visit Florida has been renewed for 3 years. The debate is over. It exists and will continue to exist. $20 million for the Job Growth Grant Fund. We have $28.4 million for our ranked list for arts, culture, history, and library construction in the state. We fully fund 2 lists, and for 2 other lists, we are funding half the list. In the Department of State, there is $18.4 million related to elections and cybersecurity, including $6.6 million in the current fiscal year using 2020 federal funds to shore up our voting systems and networks. There's $3 million set aside in the next fiscal year for the Department of State to submit a budget amendment and decide how best to deploy those federal funds as we approach the November election. We start construction facility for our state's historical artifacts with the funding of $2.5 million. There are 8 new troopers to work the First Coast Expressway, which is now coming online in Northeast Florida. And there's $3.5 million to design a new state emergency operations center. And finally, we fully fund the DOT work program at $9.3 billion. Senators, as we go into difficult economic times, potentially, it's important that we continue these investments in our transportation system. They not only improve our transportation system, but they act as an economic stimulus to our economy during times like this. That is the TED budget.
Okay, thank you, Chairman Bradley. Thank you to all the sub-chairs for the tremendous work that you've done. This was a bit of a challenge this year because there were adjustments being made even up until the end of last week, and our being here a little late to make sure that we were being responsible given the circumstances that we were facing and the unpredictability of those circumstances. So again, thank you to our appropriations team and to staff. Cindy, great job. Okay, we are going to go into questions. The opportunity was provided to submit written questions as well as a written debate, which before we leave here today, a motion will be made to spread the debate comments onto the journal. Madam Secretary, do we have a written question or written questions?
Mr. President, we had one written question from Senator Pizzo.
Senator Pizzo, is it your desire to have the question read, or would you like to offer it live?
Madam Secretary is eloquent and articulate. I'm sure she can.
Madam Secretary, you're recognized.
Senator Pizzo is asking about the budget implication should we have an executive order or relief on the collection of taxes through DOR. An example would be the quarterly taxes that are due or collectible on March 20th. That is the question, Mr. President.
Chairman Bradley.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yes, the corporate taxes are due at the end of this month, and at this point in time, there's no executive order to delay collection of those taxes. I will tell you historically that corporate income taxes are not, they're a tax that generally comes in on time and generally paid in full. So I would not expect that to be any different in the coming months. Obviously, we're dealing with a economic situation that is unpredictable. But even through unpredictable times, our corporate income tax receipts and the timeliness of those receipts has been steady. So I don't anticipate that changing when it comes to corporate income tax receipts.
Further questions? Further questions? Senator Pizzo, you recognize for a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a follow-up to Chair Bradley. We're getting dozens of texts, emails, and calls about they're actually due tomorrow. On the 20th, they're pulled from businesses' accounts, and businesses large and small, really, if they don't have access to SBA loans, or that's not advisable, they're going to shut down. And a 30-day bridge, a 45-day bridge would be, if the governor would be amenable to suspending or giving some forbearance for a small period of time on the collection of payroll taxes and sales tax, which are actually going to be pulled from everyone's account tomorrow. And I'm just wondering how crippling would that be to the operation of our state should there be a 30-day suspension to bridge those businesses for 30 days?
Chairman Bradley.
Thank you, Mr. President. Again, a delay in collections would be an executive decision, and I will defer to the governor on that matter. I will tell you that we have robust reserves, and our cash flow situation is enviable when you compare it to other states in the union. So I'm quite comfortable that we are in a solid, secure financial position as a state to pay our bills and to deal with any circumstances that may present that may be presented to us.
Further questions? Further questions? Leader Gibson for a question. And Chairman Bradley, if you need to defer to any of the sub-chairs, feel free to do so.
Thank you, Mr. President. And this is kind of connected to the budget and, I guess, actions. I know that the federal unemployment is federal, but obviously it's distributed through the state. In terms of legislation that's supposed to come to send funds to deal with that issue, is there anything that we have to do through our budget to help get benefits to individuals, if without having to reconvene, or are you aware of how we can handle that in our budget?
Chair Bradley.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate the question. Reemployment assistance is what the leader is asking about, and that certainly is something that I'm sure all of our offices are receiving inquiries about right now. Let me put in perspective our financial position in the state now compared to another important marker in our state's economic history. Beginning June 30th, 2008, the Reemployment Assistance Trust Fund, and June 30th, 2008. It was when we started the Great Recession. There was about $2 billion in the trust fund. Our balance September 30th, 2019 is over $4 billion. So we are in a very, very strong financial position when it comes to our UC trust fund. We're twice as healthy than we were when we were dealing with the Great Recession back a decade ago. So I am quite confident and comfortable that the state is well prepared to deal with reemployment assistance from a financial standpoint now and in the coming months. We do not need to take any action as a legislature to make sure that those payments occur.
Further questions? Further questions? Okay, is there debate? Anyone want to offer debate? As I said, we have received some debate in writing. So that will be reflected in the journal. Having no debate, President Lee from the 20th in debate, you recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. And first, let me just applaud the hard work of Senator Bradley, the subcommittee chairs, the conferees, and our capable staff. You know, few people can appreciate the hard work that goes into the budget more than I do, and I know that it has been a tremendously challenging environment in which you've been operating. And I think you're right. I think this is a really responsible budget for this moment in history. And, you know, I didn't say anything when Senator Monfort had his little going away day. Those things get a little long, but I don't think there's an individual that has a tougher job in the Florida Senate than to represent Tallahassee. We all get to go home and go somewhere else, and he gets to run into all his constituents and publics, and they're all state employees, and they've been neglected for too long. And it's really nice to see that as you walk out the door here, that we're doing so much for state employees, and I'm happy for you. It's a real tribute to your public service, and I appreciate what Senator Bradley and his team have done in that regard. And it's probably the most appropriate thing at this moment in time in our budget, because the economic climate has changed dramatically in just the past 2 weeks, and the public health impacts are going to be no less than the economic impacts. And I'm not a public health expert. I'm glad we have people that are. I probably don't wash my hands enough, and my wife would tell you I'm not even a health expert, much less a public health expert. But I sure do like those Klondike bars in the back, I'll tell you that. But I've spent my entire adult life in heavily leveraged businesses that are very cyclical in nature. And I will tell you what I have learned from that experience. It is the companies and organizations that react the quickest to changes in the economic climate that tend to fare best. They tend to survive easiest, and they tend to avoid the greatest human impacts to their employees over time. And I say that because the climate has changed. And I realize and appreciate, I wrote down some of the numbers that Senator Bradley mentioned. You know, $1.7 billion in the budget stabilization fund, which of course we have to pay back if we borrow it. And you know, I'm not in contact with EDR, so I don't know, but my guess is the $1.3 billion of unallocated GR is already gone before this budget goes into effect. And that's just the reality. And I don't say that because I think that what we're doing here in the tail end of our budget process, as all of this economic paralysis begins to take hold and the contagion rips through the tourism industry and other places in our economy, to suggest that anything we've done here wasn't responsible and thoughtful. I mean, I don't think I've met anybody who takes his job more seriously. In fact, you take your job more seriously than you do yourself, Senator Bradley. And I admire that. And Representative Cummings, no less so, these presiding officers, the work that's been done here by you and your staff, Cindy Kynock and Ross and all the folks down in the Appropriations Suite, is extraordinary. And it's very unusual to be operating in an environment that's this dynamic. But I've been home for only a week. And I'm a landlord, and I hear from a lot of small business people, and I can tell you the pain and fear is already begun in our economy. I'm sure you've heard from your constituents. Our costs are going to rise. We know that in addition to the economic impacts on the revenue, and not a 22